Greetings and welcome to this week's Real Talk with ZSJ. I'm your host, Sister Zakia, and welcome. Make sure y'all hit the thumbs up button as you all are coming in and share. If you are viewing us from Twitter or Facebook, be sure to head over to YouTube and Rumble as well and subscribe to the channel. Welcome to this very special Real Talk with ZSJ. We are honoring just honored ancestor now, Dr. Amos Wilson, who would have been 81 years old today if he was still with us. So I have my good brother, Akil Parker, who is not new to Real Talk with ZSJ. He is part of the family over here. So welcome, Akil. Introduce yourself to any new listeners. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing well. I'm glad to be back. This is like my third or fourth time.
Oh man, you've been on here about 5 or 6 times. Quit playing.
5 or 6 times? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm like a regular. Yeah, I'm glad to be here discussing
you're part of the family.
Yeah, appreciate that. Yeah, I'm glad to be on here discussing the ancestor, Baba Amos Wilson.
Yes.
Because he's a very obscure figure that should not be as so obscure,
Right.
but that's how a lot of our African-centered Pan-African scholars are.
Isn't that right?
That's why I've tried to take it upon myself to try to remove them from obscurity.
Yes.
And one of them. I guess a little bit about myself. I'm gonna just say a couple things about myself because tonight's about Amos Wilson. I'm a professor at Cheney University. I teach math, and then I have a company called All This Math, where I'm trying to change the relationship between mathematics and the Black community at large, from one where many of us run from it and treat math like it's a bully, and we start to embrace it like a viable tool or somebody that you call when you feel like you're being bullied. So I'm trying to change that dynamic and change the relationship. We do, me and my son, actually, my 16-year-old son, Naseem, shout out to him. He tutors alongside me. We tutor a lot of people in the community, and, we're building up an online presence, building up a YouTube channel to provide content infused with Black history. And, one of the things I want to talk about tonight is how Histomatics, which is a framework that I've been developing over the last couple of years, really was in many ways influenced by scholars and elders such as the late Amos Wilson in terms of their analysis of the educational system and, their conversations about power and how we need to get from under European domination, and how math, just like all subjects in all areas of life and all areas of existence, should be used as tools to gain power. And math really should be used as a tool to gain power, not just as a way for our children, not just a subject for our children to excel in so that they can get jobs from white folks. And that's definitely something that echoes the message of the late Amos Wilson.
That's absolutely right. And welcome. Seeing a lot of the family in here. Mama Toya, thank you so much for being here, showing a lot of love to me and Brother Akil. Reggie, who is an amazing educator down in Knoxville, Tennessee, doing an amazing job educating our children down in rural Tennessee. Well, I don't know, Knoxville ain't that rural. It's actually decent. It's actually a pretty nice city.
I spoke to Reggie yesterday. Me and him had a good build.
Yeah.
Me out with gave me some information, helping me out with some ideas. We're gonna talk more in the future, in the near future, actually.
Absolutely. And I see you connecting with Dr. Akil. Yeah, you connecting with a lot of other amazing Black scholars, Black male scholars. But I want to bring up the voice of Dr. Wilson. It's a short clip. I want people to be able to hear him. He has a little raspy voice. I got to tell the story really quickly. And welcome to, I see new people still coming in. Welcome. We are honoring our ancestor, Dr. Amos Wilson, who would have been 81 years old today. You can read a very detailed description of him in the details of this video. please do like and share this video because I want to introduce Dr. Wilson to people who may not have ever heard of him. But I want to tell a quick story. I love telling this story, but when I was pregnant with my daughter, Asada, almost 8 years ago now, and I listened to Dr. Amos Wilson a lot on YouTube, and I would every single night or every single day. And after my daughter was born, for those parents, and if you have children, you know that sometimes babies have something called colic, which just means that they are crying, constantly crying, but they've been fed, they've been changed, you've birthed them, like you've done all the things, but they're still something happening. They're still crying. So my husband and I were just at a loss, and it was like early on. She was just a few months old, and we were tired, and we just couldn't figure out, like, we couldn't get her quiet. So my husband was like, well, let me go on and turn on Uncle Amos. Maybe we can just listen to this and hopefully she'll stop. We didn't even make the connection, but soon as we turned on his voice, she literally stopped crying. And that was because I believe she was used to hearing him in utero, because I listened to him every day when I was pregnant with her. And I know that there's some science around children being able to recognize certain voices in utero. So I tell that story all the time. And when we did that, we tested it. Like, we noticed that every night she would cry to hear his voice. And so, yeah, that happened for a few months, where we would literally be forced to listen to Dr. Amos Wilson every night just to get the baby to go to sleep and quiet down.
Yeah, I mean, that reminds me of, like, I think the first book that when I was introduced to Amos Wilson, I think it was by a good brother named Courtney that I used to work with. He was a substitute teacher in one of the first schools that I taught at. I actually talked to the brother earlier today. He's doing good. But he had a copy of The Developmental Psychology of the Black Child.
Yep, right here.
And when I started reading that, that's one of the things he talks about. He talked about, like, how the education process. And you got the hardback.
I got the hardback. This is from my college days. I actually had got this when I was at the university in Ohio. And I kept it.
You liberated it.
I liberated it.
Yeah. But yeah, like, he put me on to the idea that, like, the educational process starts in utero, and that's something I would never thought of that before. I thought, okay, once the child is born, then you start teaching, they start learning. But he wrote about that. He did.
He absolutely, he talks about that. The education process does. And it's so funny because I see later in life, because recently there's been this, like, cradle to career movement and all of that. And so you see that a lot of Black thinkers of the past, their ideas have been accepted now by the mainstream, but they never are given credit. Right. I've seen that happen with social emotional learning. That was from a brother, Dr. James. I cannot think of his name. He was at the Yale Child Study Center. Wasn't really African Center, but he was just a scholar. And he developed social emotional back in the 70s, early 70s. But, we know how that is. But I want to bring up a video. This actually and it's just 3 minutes, but it's one of my favorite clips of listening to Dr. Wilson. I wanted to give people a test, and I also have a few excerpts that I would like to read. So let me just see if I can share my screen and share my audio really quickly. Thanks for everybody, your patience and being in here with us. When you come in, hit the thumbs up button and share. And so share audio, and let me get over here. There we go. All right, so you guys can see that. Let me just hit the video. Oh, this is
consciousness. Without human consciousness, there is no world. It is the presence of human consciousness that brings meaning into the world. Without human beings in this world, conscious human beings in this world, in effect, there would not be a world. We bring the world into being through our consciousness. And through our consciousness, we create the world we live in. Out of the totality of reality, our consciousness cuts out a world that can fit itself. In other words, the kind of world you exist in reflects the kind of consciousness that you have. And notice if you change your consciousness or change your values and orientation, you enter into a different world. You interact with different people. People often that you didn't even know existed in the world. Social situations that you might not have even recognized until you entered into a new level of consciousness. You see people, say for instance, who become addicted, say to crack or something, and now enter into a whole world and enter into a whole social system that before they became addicted, they hardly noticed. They didn't know what it was all about. And they picked up new friends and new relations, whole new ways of acting, whole new purposes in life. They lost old friends, broke with old families, all kinds of things. In other words, the consciousness, that addictive consciousness, brought into the world a new foreground and put other things into the background. Therefore, man's consciousness is a creative act. And the kind of consciousness you have will determine the kind of world you create. Right?
I think that's powerful. You know what I mean? Because I was telling you in the green room, Akil, before we even, got started with this, is that one of the things about Dr. Wilson is that he literally changed the way that I think about things. And I had never heard anybody describe consciousness in that way. I never heard anyone really describe education and our taste for certain things. Why is it that, we say we're free, but every time we spend our money, we're spending it with other people. And,
Right.
Why is that? I mean, he just was his analysis was so sharp. I don't know, what was your reflections from that short clip?
Yeah, like to your point, like one of the things you talked about that you just reminded me of is like, why is it that every time everything that makes you feel good involves the economic benefit of our oppressors and of
Right.
other people outside of us, like
Right.
us to like escape from who we are,
Right.
So it's like it's and that goes to that question, like, when a lot of people don't want to address the reason or the reason behind like why they like the things that they like, because that becomes something very deep. A lot of people just say, well, I don't know, I just do. Well, I believe there's a reason for everything. Even if we don't know the reason, there's some type of, deep introspective analysis that can be done to figure out, like, why do we like the things we like? Just like, why do we dislike the things we dislike? And I think that ties right into like, the idea of consciousness and the concept of consciousness and like the way he describes it, among so many other things. Because there's always something else going on. Like dealing with Europeans, man. there's always some type of something going on, that we got to be on the lookout for. Can never let our guard down. There's always, and nothing is ever coincidental or accidental, as AZ said on Illmatic.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, people, I love all the comments, and I welcome, comments from people in terms of your own reflections of what Dr. Wilson and his work has meant to you all. I just want to share just several of the books. The brother really left a blueprint for us, and, no disrespect to Christians, but this is my Bible, right? You can tell my husband and I, we share this book, and we got our little, it's been written in, it's been highlighted and all that. You can see it's been used very, 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 very much. And in this book, he talks about everything from economics, politics, government, psychology, and he talks the most about power, of course. in terms of what we need to be doing collectively to attain the power that we need, for our ultimate liberation. And so I liberated 2 books from the university. So this one is the one that you mentioned, the developmental psychology. I don't know if people can see that, developmental psychology of the Black child. This is the very first edition. I'm so proud to have a copy of this, written in 1978. He wrote this book in 1978. There's still, you can still actually get, I think it's maybe up to like a 5th edition now, because Sababu actually are still releasing books, because Dr. Amos Wilson left so much writing that was unpublished. So that's the developmental psychology. This one, to the point from Brother Gregory Jones, this one is called Understanding Black Adolescent Male Violence. This one also was liberated from the university store. You can see, but yeah, I don't know why I'm so proud of that, but I'm like, when I read this book, I was like, oh, ain't no way in the world I'm giving this one back. Yeah, I kept it. So no, this one is 1991, and I'm trying to see, is this the first? This is the first edition. So this one is 1991, and then every time people want to talk about violence in our community, if they haven't read this, I don't want to hear a whole lot, because to me, I feel like, again, he had the best analysis for the intra-community violence that we see. And now we have so many Eurocentric perspectives out there where we literally see us fighting each other in terms of like the source of the violence. People are making it about gender. And it's really wild what you see in the social media streets. This one is a more recent one. This one is actually a transcribed video that he did. And I found that out by reading it, because I've listened literally to every video that YouTube has from Dr. Wilson. I've listened to it. And so when I was reading this book, I'm like, wait a minute, I've heard this before. So this book right here, shout out to Sababu for still releasing books. But yeah, this one is a transcribed video. So this one says Issues of Manhood in Black and White, an inclusive look into masculinity and the societal definition of African man. And so for me, this one right now is very pivotal with all the conversations around gender and toxic masculinity and all of that stuff. And then finally, this is he's written several other books, but this is the conclusion of the books that I have. It looks like I liberated this one from a university too. So this one is The Falsification of African Consciousness. This one right here, oh man, I actually encourage everybody to get all of them, but this one right here that's why I played the clip. This one, I believe, will completely change the way you think about things. This one right here allows you to go really deep in terms of it's based in psychology. You know what I mean? And so, yeah, I just wanted to show people that I'm not just talking, but I'm very well studied in our brother. I have not finished Blueprint, but I am definitely obviously going to finish Blueprint. But I just wanted to show people all of the work that he left for us. Like, there's literally nothing new under the sun. All of our ancestors. I just want to share real quick, and I'll let you get in here, Akil, to share. But I had an opportunity this past weekend to attend the Jacob Carruthers conference, which was started after 2004 when our dear brother became an ancestor. And the book that I have from him that was also really pivotal in terms of how I think, and I use some of the language he has in that book to push back on a lot of the Eurocentric division that we see online, is Intellectual Warfare. I will encourage everybody, if you don't have Jacob Carruthers' Intellectual Warfare, please get it. Babe, are you downstairs? Okay, can you bring that one up for me, please? Sorry, I should have asked you earlier.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
You want me to show my copy?
Yeah, you show your copy.
Yeah, I had to reference my copy last night when I was on about sexual miseducation of Black men, and So one of the things,
send me the link to that. I missed that.
yeah, definitely.
Is it appropriate for Amir to watch?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Definitely. I'm gonna have Naseem check it out too. I don't think
Okay.
he would watch it. I'm gonna have him check it out. But it was an excerpt in here inside Intellectual Warfare where because he, what Carruthers is doing is he's like laying bare like the Eurocentric worldview. And he's showing the contrast between the African-centered worldview and the Eurocentric worldview. And one of the things I talked about last night is like Greek mythology and how even if it's quote unquote mythology, it still informs and influences like the culture. And people, internalize these ideas from within the culture. And it talked about women and the creation of women and how, one of the things I talked about last night was like a lot of the mistakes that we make as Black men in terms of how we treat Black women are really due to, us being socialized in these European systems. And we can go back to the beginning of Europeans and go right to their mythology where Zeus basically, and this is what Carruthers talks about, he documents in here from some Greek scholars, right? He gets the information directly from the horse's mouth, how the women in Greek mythology were created as a punishment to men. Right, as a punishment to man. So then you talk about a society that's grounded in this idea that the woman can never be a human in that type of situation, right? If she's created just as a punishment, just ideologically,
right?
That's what they're dealing with. And then we were thinking of then I mentioned John Henry Clark, another ancestor that greatly influenced me in my ideological development, telling us in one of his lectures and in his writing that we have to look at like how Europeans treat each other, treat their own children, treat their own family, treat their own women. And then we can then look back and say, well, how do you expect them to treat us like as a collective, historically and even in the present. So definitely like, intellectual warfare. And I like intellectual warfare for many reasons, but one reason is like he breaks it down into it's two parts, right? So you have like the battle, it's like the intellectual war, and then it's the intellectual civil war, where he talks about a lot, because there's a lot, and that still is prevalent today. Whether it's between like nationalists and assimilationists, just he really breaks that down and gets into that. Gets into like Skip Gates and people like that back in the 80s. Writing full page articles in the New York Times about African-centered scholars, and then African-centered scholars having to put him in his place and like let him know, how foolish he was and whatnot. So this, I definitely second that. Like this is a great, text. I got introduced to this, through ASCAC in the study group.
Yes.
Study group here in Philly. The Septepi study group. Shout out to Baba Ron McCoy and them. But I was gonna say I got that book. I haven't read that yet. The Amos Wilson book, Issues of Manhood in Black and White. So this is this one, and The Psychology of Self-Hatred and Self-Defeat. This is the last one that I grabbed.
Yeah, I got that one too. Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, I forgot to grab that. It's sitting right there.
Yeah, I haven't dug into these yet, but I just I just found out they existed. I found out they existed. I thought I had everything that he had published. So I was like, I need to just have it. I got to just have this. At some point I'm gonna read it and use it as a reference. And that whole, like you mentioned, you brought up Black on Black violence. I see you got your copy. The Black on Black violence text, the psychodynamics of self-annihilation in service of white domination. So the major takeaway from that book is like, and he says this in different lectures, discussing this topic, is that Black on Black violence is really just white on Black violence by remote control. Like that's really what it is. And a lot of our people that are, very confused, they push back on ideas like that because they don't want to blame the white man. They don't want to blame the white man. So they say stuff like, oh, you always want to blame the white man. I think actually we don't blame the white man enough. Don't blame enough because we don't know enough.
So you got Hashem cracking up in the background.
Like we collectively, we haven't studied enough to know enough. I think there'd be a lot more blame if we knew more. But I think herein lies, and another reason people don't want to place the blame is because there are some people in the community that want to use the fact that there has been oppression as a reason to justify us not attempting to move forward and not attempting to do anything. And I think that's a very small minority. of the people. Well, I think most people that are like, holding, the white community and historically, the European community accountable, I think they're using that as just a proper way to assess why we're in the condition we're in, while we try to move to create and build, create our own communities, maintain ourselves, develop, our own infrastructure and whatnot. But, a lot of people, they just want to cape for white folks, just want to, protect them. Because, it's what we've been trained to do. A lot of us,
And Dr. Wilson talks about that a lot. I want to give a shout out to Africa the Great for the super chat. Definitely appreciate that. Thank you for hitting the super chat. And Gregory Jones, he talks about, another deeply revered scholar who actually still very much with us, alive and well, down in Atlanta, Marimba Ani. I also have a copy of that. That book is it's a difficult read, but you're absolutely right. That book is definitely explores a lot of the things that Dr. Wilson talks about as well. The brother said he want to join the ASCAC DMV read chapter. There is one, and actually my husband and I are part of it. Mario Beatty is actually over that one in Silver Spring. So definitely check that out, Brother Jones.
Well, he's also the international president.
He's also, the international president. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah, Mario Beatty, for people who don't know, is a professor of African Studies over at Howard. His wife, Dr. Valethia Watkins, is also very much an amazing scholar, and she does a lot of work in pushing back on mainstream feminism. And in fact, I have a paper of hers that I am going to actually read on this channel. I've been trying to get her to do an interview, and I now see that she's finally granting interviews, so maybe she'll come on. I saw her on, I don't know if you saw Brother Akil, she was on Greg Carr, I guess has his own show on Roland Martin's channel.
Is it the Black Table?
I think so, yeah.
Just saw a clip. I just saw advertisement for it. Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
So I saw that her and Mario Beatty both were on there. So we'll see. We'll see what happens with that. But I was trying to find. I lost it. There was a passage in this book that I actually wanted to read, and let me see. I lost it. I thought I had it. It was in falsification.
Mm-hmm. I did a presentation on that for a couple of years back. Based on that, I need to find that presentation.
I'm
talking about your European historiography, and I mean that's one of the things he talks about within the book, within the falsification of African consciousness, which ties into that clip that you played in the beginning.
Exactly.
Yeah. I think another reason too. I realized this. I don't think I know. Another reason that I'm fond of Dr. Wilson is because when he talks, and he's from the South. He's from Mississippi,
Hattiesburg.
Yeah, and then he goes to Morehouse. So but of course he's not really. One day I posed this question on Facebook, what would things be like if the prototype Morehouse man was Amos Wilson?
Ooh wee.
And not some of the
we be free by now.
Some
I'm
of
serious.
I guess more popular Morehouse alumni,
right?
For respect due, and I get it because I'll even I will also say that I attended Morehouse College as a freshman in college in 1997, and when I was there, I was not of the same mindset that an Amos Wilson. So that's really a self-directed critique. Actually, if anybody feels uncomfortable and in their feelings about that comment, so be it. But another thing is he migrates to New York, ends up in New York, and the way he talks, and he's talking in the 90s in a lot of these lectures, and he has kind of the same ethos as the gritty, raw New York hip hop from the 90s and that golden era. And he's talking about systems. He's confronting and challenging systems, challenging European domination. Yes. And he makes sense. And everything he's saying, it makes sense. You know, I mean, people can disagree with what he's saying, but at least you got to confront it. And that's part of why I did the the hashtag Amos Wilson 28 this month.
I've been appreciating those too. Thank you. Putting
them out there. Because if you disagree, that's cool too. Because like again, that removes him from obscurity. Because now you gotta, if you're gonna confront it, now confront it.
That's right.
Like
that's right.
Say why you think he was wrong,
I found. Yeah, absolutely. I found the passage that I want to read because this book is actually not very thick. I mean, you can read this to me. You can read this in a weekend. You know, quite honestly. So this is falsification, but I wanted to give a shout out. Thank you. I am humbled from the Black Mental Effect $25 super chat. I think that's one of the highest I've received. So grateful. And absolutely, I wanted to start this channel because I wanted to bring this knowledge that has, for me, helped me in my own political development, and to bring an African-centered perspective in this sea of, just, I don't know what I would call it. Some of it is straight up insanity. You know what I mean? Some of the things that we see on YouTube and some of the things that we see just in the social media space at any given time. So I absolutely and it's not about money for me. It's not about likes or views, even though I do want you all to share. As a reminder, hit the thumbs up and share this broadcast. But I want this information to get out to the masses of our people. And we have to do what we have to do because YouTube is certainly shadow banning channels like mine. I believe Brother Omawale may be experiencing the same thing because he's doing everything right in terms of, the algorithms and things like that. And it's kind of his subscriptions have kind of stayed stagnant, and so have mine. And I just say that because obviously, there's certain forces that don't want this critical information to get out there. So we have to, be creative like we've always been as a people, and circumvent them as much as possible. So hopefully, people will like and share. But I wanted to read this passage really quickly in The Falsification of African Consciousness. This is the one that I'm reading from. This is the first edition. This is a book that I liberated when I was in college. I kept it from the university library. Now, keep in mind, I didn't have any professors that used him on the syllabus. I searched for him on my own because I had already been introduced to warrior scholars. And so when you read one, you get introduced to the rest of them. And so I think about maybe 3 or 4 of my books were liberated from the university that I attended in Ohio. So let me read this passage really quickly, and then Akil, you and I can reflect on it, and then hopefully the chat can reflect on it as well. So the passage that I'm reading is on page 14. It says the socio-political role of historiography. And what he says here, he says, we have an issue here that I call the projection and image of history. History has been downplayed in this society. History has a poor reputation. Often it is looked upon by too many people as essentially a set of dates and events. People ask, why should I study these dates? Why should I study these events? What does it have to do with today? It is as if they say, okay, it may be used to explain how some things came about in today's world, but probably we could live without it. Often history among even many of our own people, even so-called Black history itself, has been looked upon as irrelevant and unprofitable. The idea is, quote, why study Black history? It's not going to make me any money. It's not going to get me a job. What can you do with it? You should get yourself a degree in computer science, get yourself a trade. I'm not interested in Black power. I'm interested in green power, end quote. These statements express foolish concepts. He says, when we hear them, to recognize that the individual has not seen the connection between history, power, and money. There is a direct connection between history and economics. I often say in this regard that if there were not a direct relationship between history and money, a direct relationship between history and power, history and rulership, history and domination, then why is it that the European rewrote history? He always made me think differently, y'all. And finally, this is the last passage. Why is it that Europeans want to take our history away from us? Why is it that the European wants to rewrite our history and distort it? Why is it that he doesn't want to present it at all? Apparently, the rewriting, the distortion, and the stealing of our history must serve vital economic, political, and social functions for the European, or else he would not bother and try so hard to keep our history away from us and to distort it in our own minds. Let us meditate on these issues, and I think we'll come to realize that there is a direct relationship between history and economics, political, and social development.
Mm-hmm.
Man, listen, because I know so many people be like, history don't matter. In fact, I was on the Tammy Mack show earlier today, and we're talking about reparations. And one of the guests, of course, he was Black and was against reparations and wanted to know why y'all keep wanting to go backwards. You know, I don't want any reparations, you know, and all of this other kind of stuff. And I couldn't help but think of Dr. Wilson when I was listening to that brother speak. And that's what made me want to think. When I knew tonight when you and I were going to be talking, I said, I got to read that passage. What was your reflection on that? And I'd love to hear from the chat as well.
I mean, history is just, it's directly responsible for your sense of identity. Yes. Another quote that I put in the Amos Wilson 28 that speaks to that. And, with this one, he connected it to like mathematics. Let me just read this quote, which ties directly to that. Yeah. He says, history is not only a sequence of events. It's not only a series of dates and events. History involves the demarcation of time, the division of time. Our sense of history is actually a geometrical and mathematical concept. The history is a system of coordinates wherein we locate ourselves in time and space. We determine our past, future, and present in terms of our sense of history. And therefore, when our history is rewritten or when history is distorted, our sense of time and place is also distorted as well. And when we let the Europeans write history and divide history up in terms of their time system, they're also distorting our identity and distorting our sense of location and place, distorting our sense of the past, as well as our destiny. And that's the end of the quote. So then, it makes you think about like 1619, or when with the European version of history, we are objects within their experience in their version of history. So then what happens is you start, when you believe in that, because that's the history that you're given, we've been given, then it's like, okay, well, we just started at 1619. Like, and in reality, we've been existing as human beings for thousands of years prior to that.
That's right.
But when you but now your sense of identity is distorted and you're given a new identity. And now you start to think that, things like Barack Obama is huge progress because your sense of history is distorted.
That's right.
And then you'll believe that because these people gave you your history. They rewrote, They revised and rewrote your history, right? And when we've been in thriving, great civilizations for many, many years, even, speaking of like Obama, I mean, even in like the 20th century, if you have like revolutionary leaders that were of African descent, that were already leading countries and leading nations, if you take that out of history, of course, like somebody like a Barack Obama looks even more impressive because you think it's never happened before.
Right.
So your sense of history has been distorted. So you're like, okay, well, because I'm like, I get it when like, people that I got respect for say things like, it's great to see I want my children to see a Black man in a position of power like that, the leader of a nation. And I'm like, cool, I get it. That's cool. I want my children to see that too. But I'm going to show my kids Kwame Nkrumah. I'm going to show my kids Ahmed Sekou Touré in Guinea. And him and Nkrumah was co-presidents after there was a coup and the British wouldn't, British and some other people wouldn't, he wasn't able to come back into Ghana, right? I'm going to show them, Maurice Bishop. I'm going to show them Thomas Sankara in Burkina Faso. There's all these other people we can show them. So it's nothing wrong with wanting our children to see those examples. But again, when we control our history, then we say, okay, well, we already have these examples. So the examples that you're giving us at least for that reason, if that's why you want to be enamored with that person, you don't have to be enamored with that person for that reason, because we already got that, right? So yeah, so definitely like, you know, the distortion of, you know, and I love it when he breaks it down into like a mathematical concept, because now I'm thinking of the XY plane, the X-axis, the Y-axis, and I'm thinking about the curves that, you know, like when I'm helping Amir, like, you know, do his graphs and whatnot. I'm thinking about like, so in actuality, you know, we're misplaced on the coordinate plane because somebody else has determined our history, is giving us a false history. So we're actually not on that place. So we think we're just starting, you know, so we're right here in the graph, but really we're actually up here in reality. But we think that we're here because it's based on somebody else's, you know, version of the story.
That's so true. That's exactly, you know, I have had this idea for a while, and I'm not sure if it's out there. I know you work at a university, but is there like a curriculum that someone has developed on Dr. Wilson's many theories and his ideas that we can literally use to teach in our own communities, like communiversities? I remember Jacob Carruthers and others in Chicago actually had communiversities, and I think that's something that we need to do now. As you know, we actually need to talk about this, because I know I'll be reaching out to both you and Omawale, but our young men have to be prepared for this crazy world, you know, that they're coming up in. And I've been thinking about that obviously a lot, because I have a son who's, you know, a teenager now. He's in high school, and I'm just like, you know, the world is already anti-Black, but there's a specific increase that I have seen, even from so-called, you know, liberals and progressives that have been particularly anti-Black male, right? Or anti-Black straight male, even if we want to, you know, like really be specific. And I've seen that increase, and I was compelled to start a warriors development, almost like a rites of passage for my son and his peers. And that's literally what we're starting with, is literally 6 young black boys, early teens. There's one South Asian young man who's going to be indoctrinated in this Black Warrior Scholarship. But he, you know, he's around, he's a part of the family. And I want them to be prepared, you know, for this world, and to be able to thrive, even though they have to have their heads on a swivel, so to speak, especially if they're entering college. That's where I think things are really going to get interesting as we continue, as kids continue to matriculate in these colleges and universities. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, but you definitely are part of the team that I'm trying to cultivate for these young men.
Yeah, so I haven't seen any curriculum like that. I think it definitely needs to be created. And even if it's created in conjunction with some of the work from some of the other like obscure scholars that need to be removed from obscurity. Yes. But to your point, like, you know, a lot of the young brothers and the young sisters too, like they're not, especially if you look at things in the context of like public school, charter schools, even private schools, like they're not war ready. And I think that that's why the title of you know, Jacob Carruthers' book that we mentioned earlier is so important, because this really is war. Like, you know,
it really is.
And I was reminded today, because I do some consulting work at a school, you know, down in Chester, and I'm observing this classroom, and I'm observing some of the students, and it reminds me of, like, you know, a lot of the experiences I had when I was in the high school classroom. And this is a middle school class. You know, it was mainly like the 8th graders, and I know they were a little bit hyper because it was after lunch, and they would they ate a bunch of, you know, sugary foods and GMO food and all that. So I know, and they're you know, they're preteens and teenagers, so I get all that. But what's even deeper than that is they're not war ready, and it's not their fault. They haven't been trained to be war ready because they don't even know that they're at war. and they've been, and one reason that, you know, they can sit, and I'm sitting in a math class, observing a math class, and one reason that they can like sit and play around during a math class is because they haven't been, you know, told, they haven't been told, and haven't been taught and instructed about the reality that, again, the purpose of math is to remove white domination. Is to
That's right.
compete with white economic power. The goal for many of us is just to, you know, get jobs or move up the social ladder. And in many cases, you can do that. You can play around in school and still do that. But you can't, you're not going to remove another group that's been oppressing you, that remove their foot from your neck when you playing around, you know?
Right.
I should just, let me go to this quote.
Yeah, go to it. Shout out to us. Let's see, Oscar Grouch. Thank you. And I'm sorry if I butchered your name, but thank you for the super sticker. I am grateful. And I see you have another comment here. You are absolutely right. He said, no problem. You are on shadow ban, but thank you for this content. That's right. Thank you, brother or sister.
So that, you know, that speaks to this idea of like eternal servitude. So it's like if you're indoctrinated into this belief in your eternal servitude, even if you're a young person and you can't articulate that, you still understand it. So then it's like, well, you know, I can play around in school, you know what I mean? Like, I don't even have to, try to really understand some of these concepts, so I can figure out how to use the information, use the knowledge to, you know, build my community, be able to take control of my community as an adult one day. Amos Wilson says that, you know, we are in a sense taught to believe ourselves in eternal servitude.
Yes.
When I mentioned here earlier that when our children ask us, why should they be studying math? Or why are they studying this and that? About the only excuse we can give for them for it is so that they can get a job from other people. There is this assumption that somehow white people will always own everything and control everything. And therefore, the best we can do is to qualify to work for them. Right. But isn't there a higher motivation? Isn't there a higher cause when you say you're studying math so that you can overthrow white economic power, so that you can outthink those people, that you are at war with these people economically, socially, and militarily? And the reason why you are studying is so that we can win this struggle for our lives and survival as a people. If you really saw education not just as a job market, not just as a way of merely moving up on the social ladder, but necessary to your very survival, then you wouldn't have as much of a problem as you have getting down to those schools, seeing that those children learn what they should learn. But you have not yet come to the realization that education is about survival, not just about jobs. And then even with this, like, you know, it's all about intent. Like, what is the goal? Because there's a lot more, especially in recent years, a lot more STEM programs, STEM initiatives, and you have corporations donating money to HBCUs and in different communities and different nonprofits. But it's still the goal of incorporation of us. It's not about, I mean, we have to have these conversations with our young people to say, like, listen, if you get the opportunity to be in this program, they want you to learn this stuff so you can go work for them. Right. But our goal actually is so that you can learn this stuff and use it to help build our community, help build us. Right. Bottom line. And I think that's I'm always like basically preaching that, like, that's an explicit conversation that has to be had with young people, because this is why this is part of why I'm developing and have developed Histomatics, is because we have so many brilliant, insightful, intelligent people of African descent with PhDs and master's degrees and understand high level mathematics, understand technical sciences and biological sciences, physics, chemistry, all of this stuff. But their political orientation is just to assimilate into America. It's
falsified. Yeah. That's their consciousness. Right. It's
falsification of African consciousness.
That's right.
African consciousness doesn't really exist because their Africanity, so to speak, is just like an accessory. Right. I just happen to be black. Right. I'm African American. I just happen to be black, and I really just want to be an American. I really just want to fit in. And in terms of the larger picture, a lot of people don't understand that a lot of if not every problem we have is due to the fact that we are subject to this nation and this society. So we got to start having more of these conversations about us, anything we do, it has to be dedicated toward our own independent nation building. Because we are nation building, but we're not, many of us are not nation building for ourselves. We're nation building for other people. We're helping to build their nations.
And he talks about that all the time.
Yeah.
He said, yeah, we educated into dumbness. I remember he said that. He was like, yeah, when you come out of school with your degree, you can do a humdinger of a job of working for your oppressor, but you don't have any skills for your own community. Shout out to Son from Brooklyn for the super chat. He says, Dr. Amos Wilson is my other hero after Minister Malcolm. Saw a couple of times on the lecture circuit in New York City in early 1990s. That's amazing. You had an opportunity to meet the brother. I'm a little jealous. He says he was on time and ahead of his time. Absolutely. May Allah be pleased with his efforts. Thank you. Absolutely, Son from Brooklyn. We appreciate you for supporting the stream. But no, absolutely, Brother Akil. It's like, I actually will probably, and although I'm not trained as an educator, I certainly have enough friends and people in my network that I want to develop a curriculum out of all of the books, what I mean, that he's left us, because we do have to begin to, and I think it actually needs to start with our young people, what I mean, like literally starting as a sort of a rites of passage programs to start undoing a lot of the indoctrination that we receive being in the West, or being in a country that is completely and thoroughly anti-Black. So yeah, that's one of the ideas that I have, and I'm hoping that I'll be able to bring that to fruition at some point, for sure.
And you don't have to be trained, quote unquote, trained as an educator to do that. Just
right.
Want to reinforce that.
Yeah. Because
there are a lot of trained educators that couldn't teach their way out of a wet paper bag.
I hear that, brother. I know you.
We've all worked with them,
right? You worked with them, right?
Exactly. We've all worked with them.
Right.
And our matter of fact, and our children, and even if we haven't worked with them, if you are a so-called trained educator, your children have had them as teachers. Right. So I say all that to say that we can definitely do this as long as we can read and we can think and we have the will.
That's absolutely right. Wanted to see if we had any questions in the wanted people. We probably got about 8 more minutes to be on with you all. And so make sure you support Akil's All This Math YouTube channel. It is shout out to Sister RM, who is an amazing mod. Thank you so much, sis. But yeah, I want everybody to go and subscribe to All This Math. That's Akil's YouTube channel. And tell the audience a little bit about the channel.
So the channel is somewhere you go, you see a Black man and his, either his daughter, Asada, doing math videos together, trying to, teach math, not only to the children, but also to the parents. Because what I've been hearing over the years is like, parents, feeling uncomfortable with the quote unquote new math.
Right.
So what we're trying to do is create content where you as a parent or, grandparent, aunt, uncle, whoever, elder, or somebody that just cares about a child that's in school and they come home with homework and you want to be able to help them with homework. You can go to the YouTube channel and look up and, do a search for the topic. And hopefully I have some content on there that matches what you need. Mm-hmm. So that's on there. And especially like I'm trying to be intentional by doing the videos with my daughter, because I'm also modeling for parents. Like, this is how you show, your child, or one of the ways, because, the way I might show it might not be the best way for your child. And it's definitely not going to be the only way, because there's always multiple ways to do any math problem.
Right.
But I want to model for parents, like, this is how you can show your child, because a lot of the stuff is organic. A lot of stuff that I create video content along with Asada for is stuff that I've actually taught her. So I say, well, I taught her. So now we're going to share this lesson with the entire community, anybody that wants to watch it. And, we try to be as culturally relevant as possible.
Right. And, that's important.
Yeah. We're infusing Black history.
Right.
Matter of fact, one of the videos I did along with Asada, I think that day I had a Bethune-Cookman hoodie on. So, you know, I took the opportunity to pull out a couple of books on Mary McLeod Bethune from my library. And, you know, Asada had a brief conversation about that in the first like 45 to 60 seconds of the video before we got into the math problem.
Right.
So, you know, I'm just combining, you know, I'm trying to fix deficiencies, you know.
Yes.
In our community, we have deficiencies in terms of our own history and also in mathematics. So I was always in my classrooms, I was always talking about history a lot of the times. And my students would always say, like, you know, you should be an African-American history teacher. And I would just tell them, like, you know, I could do both. So channel, I'm trying to do both. And I just, you know, I'm trying to, and I give simplified explanations of, you know, different math topics. And I want our people to feel comfortable with math, because the way math is marketed to us in a way where we're not supposed to feel comfortable with it. We're not supposed to feel like we're supposed to feel like we can't do it. It's not for us. It's too difficult. That's really a mindset. It's programming. It's really engineering. Programmed to believe that, because that helps to maintain the status quo. And as a matter of fact, I'm gonna tell you this brief story real quick.
No, it's cool. Yeah.
I was in the tutoring session tonight, tutoring this young sister. I've been tutoring her for the last 2 years. Shout out to her. She's graduating the 8th grade at the end of this year. And we were talking about functions and creating functions from, you know, a word problem, given information. And it was about commission. The problem was about commission. When you have a weekly salary, then you got commission on top of that. And, you know, I wanted to use that as an opportunity to tell her that, see, this right here, this problem right here is why when people say things like, I don't need to know math, all I need to know how to do is count my money, that's a setup. That's a setup for you to be exploited. Because what happens is, because we're talking about commission, right? And I'm like, I'm explaining the concept of commission, because she didn't know what commission was. So I'm like, cool, I'm explaining this to you. So, you know, it was like, within the problem, there was a 6% commission. So the person that doesn't understand, that just wants to count their money, they don't really understand conceptually about fractions, about percentages, about decimals. Because you don't have that type of understanding, very likely you'll never even question, well, damn, like, if I'm getting 6%, who's getting the other 94%?
Wow.
Like, what's going on? Like, the concept of somebody else or some other people getting the 94% based on your work and your effort will likely not even ever enter into your mind, while you're worried about, I just want to count my money when my direct deposit hits every 2 weeks. That's all I care about. So, but if you have a mathematical understanding, more of a mathematical awareness, now we can have some different conversations. And now you say, well, wait a minute, like, they get 94% and I'm doing this. Maybe I need to slide over and do something entrepreneurial. Maybe I need to, you know, find out, you know, get a wholesaler and take my same skill and work for myself, you know, and, you know, or something like that. But again, you know, and there's a lot of different options that come out when you just have this type of awareness. When you got this type of awareness, now we can have some different conversations. Right. I firmly believe that one of the reasons that we're so programmed and conditioned to fear math, to hate math, to want to stay away from math, is because then a lot of things would be different. Everything will be shaken up, because now you got people asking questions about stuff that they really shouldn't be at. Those that are in power and those that control the money and control the resources, that utilize math to do all the calculations and do all the forecasting to find out, okay, 10 years from now, we're going to have this much, or 20 years from now, 2 months from now, we need to have this much. Now you got random people asking questions about what y'all are doing. Right. And they don't want that. That throws everything off, because again, this is, the theme of warfare. This is asymmetrical warfare. In order for this to work, this system we're in, this has to be asymmetrical. But once people understand the same math that those in control understand, now it becomes very symmetrical. Now it's balanced. So now you've lost some of your advantage, because now a whole bunch of us over here asking questions about what you're doing, because we understand the math and we know to even think that something is wrong. But a lot of people, because you don't understand the math, because you have not been taught the math, and you've been socialized your whole life to hate math and to stay away from it, you'll never even think to ask the question, because you won't think there's a question to be asked. You'll think, oh, okay, it's cool. I get my paycheck every 2 weeks and I just count my money. So when we hear young people say that, I remember I was at a job working for Philadelphia Youth Network in here in Philly some years ago, maybe 10 years ago or so.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, a young brother, you know, he was airing out his frustrations, like, man, all I know how to do is count my money. I don't need all that. And I just like those types of, you know, thoughts and ideas kind of haunt me. And over time, through studying people like Dr. Amos Wilson and understanding his analysis and then combining it with my own analysis.
Reggie's question: what are some lessons that you've learned from Dr. Wilson? You answering the question.
Yeah. So you know, combining it with my own experience and my own analysis, you know, is where, you know, I'm able to understand that, you know, this is how the society is maintained in its current condition, by keeping people ignorant in these many ways. And also, you know, another Dr. Amos Wilson quote when he talks about the political necessity for there to be black children not understanding mathematics. And that's something I'm actually talking about. I'm doing a presentation at the National Council of Teachers of Mathematics conference in Indianapolis next month. That's awesome. My topic. And I'm surprised they accepted my abstract. But you know, so I'm gonna let them know how I really feel, you know. But but yeah, the political necessity. So and if we as math teachers go into it understanding that there's a political necessity for a lot of these students to not understand what you're trying to teach them, you know. So as a math teacher, now you got to deal with that, right? You got to deal with that. So now, because really it's not, you know, this is a society that doesn't like what you're trying to do. Like you're in this classroom, right? Mm-hmm. Trying to teach them something that the larger society and those that control the society do not want them to actually learn. Wow. Regardless of whatever propaganda they put out there, they put out there about, you know, oh, we want to promote blacks in math and blacks in STEM and, you know, and have more black people understanding math. It disrupts the whole. It's disruptive. It's like disruptive technology, like, you know, like Tesla and, you know, electric cars and all that. It's disruptive. It's too disruptive. But we still got to do it though. Right. We have to be disruptors because we, you know, more of us have to, you know, more of our young people have to understand math, have to learn math, and it can't just be something to, like, you know, for an exclusive few. Because a lot of us that did excel at math, it's good for our ego because we feel like, well, I was good at math, so I always, you know, felt good about myself. And when the teacher gave the test back and everything, and, you know, we go to the cookout and everything, and, you know, my mom to brag about me and all that. Again, this is something that Amos Wilson talks about, this individualism. That feeds individualism because you feel like, oh, well, I'm good, but we're part of a weak group. Like if I'm good at math, I'm Akil Parker. I'm good at math. I'm great at math, probably one of the best math teachers. But if I'm part of a group that's weak at math, that means nothing. Damn. It means nothing. The collective has to be good at math. The collective. So we can grow as a collective. This is another, you know, idea that Amos Wilson talks about constantly, about privileging the collective and getting out of this individualism trap. Because the individualism is a trap.
It is. Absolutely. 100%. 100%. Mama Toya said her question is, Akil, come to my class. So I wanted to make sure you saw that. Mama Toya Algren up in Philly.
We'll talk. I shout out to Zoe, her granddaughter, one of my students.
Yeah. Brother Bay, who was hilarious, said most HBCUs don't teach his work at all. That's true. PWIs don't either. I went to a PWI. They did not teach his work at all. Someone says, how has having their own nation benefited Native Americans? The Native Americans are forced to live on detention camps, reservations, go back to it, with no infrastructure or opportunities. What's your thanks for that comment, Gregory Jones. What's your reflections on that comment?
Well, I don't see the Native Americans as actually having their own nation.
Got it.
I think from my understanding, their nation was stolen from them.
Right.
And they're colonized, you know, in a certain way. Maybe not exactly in the way that people of African descent are colonized on this land, but they're colonized. If they're placed on, you know, basically reservations or concentration camps, then that's not their own nation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Veronica wants children to work across the board. Sister RM giving a shout out to your tutoring skill. Yes, he is my son's math tutor as well. Wisdom Bar says, if Dr. Wilson was alive today, what do you think he would say or try to teach? Shit, that's a good question. I'm gonna be real with you. I want to answer that real quick. I think Dr. Wilson would be warning us about this new sort of very sophisticated form of slavery that we're being ushered into with a lot of this technology. And Akil, you kind of alluded to it in terms of the disruptive technology that Elon Musk and Tesla.
Yeah.
He's not just doing Tesla; he's also doing a Neuralink, which can actually, which if you listen to Elon Musk talk about what his ideas and goals are for Neuralink, is to capture consciousness and capture it and download it, which I think is very scary. I'm personally am not interested in that. I think Dr. Wilson will have a whole lot to say about a cashless society, central banks, digital currencies, and things like that. I think he would be warning us about a lot of things. And in fact, he was before his time. Even in the 90s, when he passed, he was talking about like some of this NWO stuff. Even back then, he was seeing the writing on the wall and was predicting some of the things that they were going to be doing. And he also predicted the rise of China. I don't know if you remember hearing that video, Akil, but he did.
I remember him saying, and it's something I want to say about Elon Musk too. Since I'm on tape, I want to go on record and say this, but I remember him saying, like, what benefit would it be if we as African people get from under the control and the grip of Europeans only to then go under the control of Asians? You know, what benefit would it be? Also, to his analysis, I think that, you know, this technology is coming. You know,
it's coming.
I think we can't stop it.
The infrastructure is in place.
Yeah, and even if, you know, Elon Musk may be a, you know, technically, you know, very brilliant person, but we can't. But again, in terms of our analysis and our assessment of people, and again, this is the type of thinking that I've gathered from, you know, studying the Jacob Carruthers and the Amos Wilsons and the
absolutely.
We also, as African people, we cannot separate Elon Musk from his genealogy and being South African and his parents being wealthy based off of apartheid.
That's right. You can't separate it.
Something that has to be, we have to acknowledge that and understand the ramifications of that. Because again, if we're gonna be African centered, that's key. Because then when we look at him, this white man, and we say, okay, well, what is your genealogy? How did your people treat my people?
Right.
So you was already wealthy. You was already getting money. Your parents was already getting money for the same. And in order for them to do that, Steve Biko had to get killed in that jail cell.
Damn.
Mandela had to, you know, they had to have the Sharpeville massacre. Right. With them school children that stood up and said, we don't want to speak Afrikaans. We want to speak our native language. And the cops had to kill them. So that whole system where that happened, this man and his family and his people, they benefited from that.
Yes, they did.
So in our assessment of, we, and again, like, I mean, you know, we can drive our Teslas and everything. But at a minimum, that this system is so all encompassing, it's almost impossible to avoid the contradictions.
It is
we all partake in certain contradictions, but at a minimum, we have to know. That's why I always say, at a minimum, you have to at least know and be aware of the contradiction. Right. And then you can make the decision if you want to partake in it or not. But, you know, at a minimum, we know. But I mean, we all have our own contradictions. So I'm not telling nobody, like, you know, don't drive Tesla or whatever. Like, that's your choice. But at a minimum, we have to know the connection between that person, his wealth, and, you know, our experience. But again, it speaks to history. So again, like we talked about earlier, the falsification of our African consciousness comes about because we don't control our own history. So people won't even know, like, damn, like, what was happening in apartheid South Africa? Right. What happened? You know, who is Steve Biko? What was the Black consciousness movement? What about Mandela? Not just Nelson Mandela, but Winnie Mandela and the ANC. Like, what was going on? You know, Chris Hani, you know, people like that. Right. Robert Sobukwe, Oliver Tambo, who was down with the ANC, who was a math teacher.
Right.
So again, so when we talk about math, if we want to teach our children STEM, want to teach our children math, they got to know about people like Oliver Tambo, because while we're teaching them how to solve equations, they need to know and make connections between people that was freedom fighters and that was fighting against systems like apartheid.
Facts.
That also were able to, like, at the same time, stand in the classroom and teach, the quadratic formula, so that they'll be able to see, like, okay, so this isn't just, about solving equations. This is much bigger than this. So I definitely want to say that, like, since Elon Musk came up, we got to connect him to his historical reality. You got to.
It's impossible. I believe that he didn't get where he is today because of that wealth that he came from. His father, his parents invested in his companies. I don't know if people even know, but Elon Musk is one of the founders of PayPal. And it was PayPal's money when he sold the company that he used to launch to help Tesla, because Tesla almost folded a few times. He actually isn't the original founder of Tesla, but I don't want to get too much, off into that. I just think that a lot of what's coming, we need to be very critical in terms of how we're thinking about moving. And I also think that we'll need some advocacy around not having a casteless society. I think that's basically going to be the new form of slavery. I don't think we really want to go that route. But there's a question here. Yolanda Simpson says, one of you mentioned that Dr. Amos says that we are afraid of blaming white people. Can you clarify if there's time? I think you said that earlier in the broadcast.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, in this desire to be, multicultural and, for a lot of us, not all of us, but, to get along and not to just be honest about our historical experience.
Right.
Jews can blame Nazis easily. Anybody that's been oppressed by another group, it's easy to, blame them. But you have to have an awareness. And I think that a lot of it is just a lack of awareness and, from not knowing the history, not knowing what really happened. So I think that's, and I think there is a fear because there can be consequences. If you live in there are perceived consequences. Or you may not want to be perceived as the angry black man or the angry black woman.
Right.
Well, and then another thing with that, in terms of the angry, not being the angry black man or the angry black woman, if I find myself like being less angry because I'm just so aware of where I'm at. Like a lot of the things that we see on social media, and people are all up in arms about, like, oh, this racist transgression and all this, this offensive thing that was done. Is like, it's to be expected. And the thing is, it's like when you want to play in the sandbox with people, you feel a different type of way when they disrespect you. But when you don't, like, I don't want to be in the sandbox with them, really. If we're moving toward independent nation building, then it's like when they act the way they act, it's like, okay, I expect that. Let me stay focused on what we're building and then direction we're going, because they're gonna do that regardless. And I think it's like that Toni Morrison quote about racism. Racism is meant to distract you.
Right.
It's a distraction, and also something else that Amos Wilson talked about. It's like a tangential or a secondary issue. He was very, very firm in this idea that it's about power. That we need
absolutely.
Power.
He talks about power all the time.
Because we can, Europeans can kind of, be more covert in their racism, and they can smile in our faces and be nice to us, and be more civil to us. And still, but if they still have power over us, our condition will not change.
That's exactly right.
So the issue is really about power. And another person that taught me a lot from me studying them was Kwame Ture, and he
I was just about to mention him.
Yeah, he's got that anecdote where he said, back in the 60s, if a white man wants to lynch me, that's his problem. But if a white man has the power to lynch me, that's my problem.
That's my problem.
Got to deal with that because he has the power to do it.
Right.
So the issue is power. It's not about racism, because if it's just going to be about racism, then we're putting all our focus on hoping that these other people will decide among themselves to treat us differently.
Right.
So we're still allowing them to have all the power.
Right.
So we got to figure out, we got to move toward trying to secure power for ourselves.
That's exactly
the real solution to any of this.
Yep. Shout out to Sister Mary Pepper. Wow. Thank you for the $49.99 super chat. She says, hey, Sisters Akil, Brother Akil. Dr. Wilson was a great scholar, one who was ahead of his time and has passed on an abundance of wisdom. Absolutely. Absolutely, sister. Thank you. Thank you so much for that super chat. And we appreciate you. Any final words before we wrap tonight? This has been a beautiful reflection on our brother, on our honored ancestor. I certainly live with his words and have changed, even how I shop. I'm more focused on supporting Black businesses, and I believe definitely reading Dr. Amos Wilson has definitely shifted the way that I view the world, the way that I think, shifted my consciousness. That's what he talks about, and has undone a lot of the indoctrination that we all received through the K-3. If you went to school in America, you have been indoctrinated and miseducated. Believe me, even if you went to a private school. Now, if you went to a real independent African center school, you are special. You were taught the correct things. But yes, shout out to Sister Marley K for being in the building tonight. What's your last words before we wrap tonight, Brother Akil?
My last words is I want everyone on this call or watching this to become an ambassador.
Yes.
In Dr. Amos Wilson and his work, not just him and his work, but the community that he was a part of. And this like cadre, so to speak, of African-centered scholars, household names.
Yes.
And then we deal with their ideas, and we interrogate their ideas, and we debate with their ideas, and grapple with them, and we do that work. And especially somebody like Amos Wilson, who was in the majority, most of his work was dealing with psychology.
That's right.
And the psychology becomes very important today, especially because now it's acceptable for the common everyday person to get mental health therapy.
Right.
So the question that we have to ask is, when people say, just get therapy, therapy, we have to ask this question, well, what type of therapy are you talking about?
Amen to that.
Because if we're getting, this, therapy that comes out of a European-centered or Eurocentric mindset or European-centered psychology, then I wonder, and this is another question that I posed on Facebook recently. I got some good feedback on it. I wonder, could it possibly be even more harmful, to us in certain ways? Or if it does benefit us, what are the ways that it's still going to harm us? Because, again, it's if it's European-centered and we're trying to be African-centered, is it going to serve to help us, get from under European domination? Because I think that's what a lot of the issues we have that require us to get therapy, which we probably all should, because, we're Africans in anti-African space. And, how is it, is it going to help us to, overthrow that, So that's just, I guess that would be my final thought. Make this brother a household name, and make the community of scholars that he was a part of all household names as well. That's
Absolutely.
what I said. I forgot. Yeah, matter of fact, this is like, it's I guess they say the ancestors don't make any mistakes. I put my whenever I wear a polo shirt, whenever I put one of my white man polo shirts on, I always try to put a pin on the African scholars. Or
yes.
I got my Jacob Carruthers. This is my Jacob Carruthers pen. So I didn't even know we were talk about intellectual warfare, but I had my Jacob Carruthers pen on this morning.
I love that. Brother, this has been beautiful. We went almost 20 minutes over, but I listen, if we're talking about our brother Amos Wilson, we're talking about the legacy that he has left. I'm going to share one last time before we end. This is one of his many works. And yep, look, Akil got his coffee. Yeah, man, we serious. Look, we got them all. This is one of the recent publications. You got that one too. Issues of Manhood in Black and White. Is want people to see the titles of these. These are available. I encourage people to go to africanworld.info to purchase the books. Please do not use Amazon. Please use a Black bookstore or go to africanworld.info online. If you want to understand intracommunity violence, a lot of people are talking about that now. This is it right here, the psychodynamics of Black self-annihilation in service of white domination. The brother break it down, Black on Black violence. These are a couple of the books that I liberated from the university. This one is from 1978, first edition, Developmental Psychology of the Black Child. And then I have Understanding Black Adolescent Male Violence. All right. And then finally, the Bible, Blueprint for Black Power, 833 pages of giving us the actual blueprint, y'all. It's an actual blueprint. Listen, the work is there. We just got to put it, we got to implement it. He left us a blueprint. It's up to us to implement the work, y'all. That's what it's got to be about, at this time. And yes, Gregory, Sankofa and Mahogany Books and the DMV are Black-owned bookstores. Shout out to the DMV in the chat tonight. I am also in the DMV, so absolutely I support Sankofa Bookstore. And let's not forget Everyone's Place in Baltimore. Although a lot of people in Baltimore will be like, we ain't part of the DMV, we Baltimore. We Baltimore. People, Black people funny about their little geographies and their cities and stuff. We be claiming sets and stuff. I'm new to the DMV, so I'm just like, okay, I'm out of that. But this has been beautiful, brother. I appreciate you. Like I said, you're a part of the family. This has been beautiful that we have had an opportunity to honor our brother tonight, who would have been 81 years old. And so we're grateful for him. I wanted to answer Reggie's question earlier. I've learned so much from Amos Wilson. I think what I struggle with this because I say that our brother literally worked himself to death because he left so much. If anybody, so his business partner Sababu is still very much alive, and he's pretty open. Like if you call him or try to talk to him or interview him about Dr. Amos Wilson, I've been told that he's open to that. I've seen Sister Dr. Maya up in Baltimore. She's interviewed the brother. And he's even welcomed people into his home, and it's like he has literally all of Dr. Amos Wilson's actual writings, he wrote a lot, just pen and paper, you know what I mean? And it was beautiful to see pictures of that from someone I know who had an opportunity to visit and actually sit down and talk to Sababu in his home. So that was beautiful. But yeah, he was serious. That's what I learned about him is we got to be serious about this thing. We got to be, if we really want to have power and liberation, we have to be serious. And literally, he left a blueprint. So for me, I'm trying very hard to live up to the standard that he left. I think he left a very high bar, a very high standard. And so that's, to me, what I would love to leave the audience with. Thank you, Sister RM. She got the AfricanWorldBooks.com. So there we go. We can go straight there. I'm not sure who runs that site, but I do know that Sababu has to be working with someone to be able to continue to sell those books. So make sure you buy directly from a Black bookstore or from African World Books that Sister RM posted in the comments. All right. So yeah, if you're new here, if you're watching me on Facebook or Twitter, please head over to Rumble and you can subscribe to my Rumble page. And also here on YouTube, you can subscribe to the YouTube channel as well. And to be sure that you hit the thumbs up button on your way out and make sure you share this broadcast in this honor of Dr. Amos Wilson, because we've shared a lot of his books and a lot of things that he believed, his ideas, his theories. We need to be able to implement those in order for us to really have true liberation for African people the world over. Thank you all so much for listening. Brother Akil, thank you for being, this was your idea. I want to tell people this was your idea, and I appreciate you. You brought this to me over a month ago, and I was excited because I hadn't even thought about it, initially. So I'm grateful that this was your idea. And yeah, I'm glad that we did it. And like I said, you found me, so you're welcome, back on this channel at any time. And I'm encouraging people again to go to All This Math. That's Akil's YouTube channel that he told us about earlier. Please make sure you all go and subscribe to that as well. And with
we on
that,
Instagram too.
That's right. Yeah, tell them what's your Instagram.
At All This Math.
Right.
All one word. All This Math.
All This Math at one word. So All This Math on YouTube, everyone.
What's that hashtag? Hashtag make Akil famous.
Yeah, make Akil famous. I love it.
I like it.
Sister RM, man, she's a great moderator, man. Amazing sister. So anyway, thank you, Marley. Thank you, everybody, for watching tonight. Thank you so much for sharing. And I appreciate all the super chats tonight. Y'all, listen, y'all showed out for Dr. Amos Wilson. We showed out for his birthday. Mm-hmm. Happy Earth Day to our ancestor. And with that, you all, we are out. Have a good night, and we'll see you soon. Next Wednesday, I'll be interviewing Siddiqui Bukhari, and we're talking about all this futuristic stuff. Hey, man, we're going to get deep with it. Make sure y'all come back next Wednesday, 8 p.m. Every week I'm here, Real Talk with ZSJ. Next week, interviewing Brother Siddiqui Bukhari out of Los Angeles, and he is a futuristic researcher, so you don't want to miss it. And Sister Marley, I know you've been on that lately, so I want to please make sure you come back because the brother going to be going into a lot of those different concepts, so I'm excited to have him next week. And with that, everyone, good night. Appreciate you, Akil. Talk to you soon, brother.
No doubt.
Much love.
Peace.